In the summer of 1943, at Tachikawa Airfield in Japan, Lieutenant Fubashi eagerly advanced the throttle on the second Ki-84 prototype. He intently observed the airspeed indicator as it surged past 387 mph, an unprecedented speed for any Japanese fighter. Below, engineers meticulously timed his ascent, noting a climb rate of 2,680 feet per minute, nearly on a par with the renowned P-51 Mustang. For the first time since the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan felt confident that they had developed an aircraft capable of surpassing America's finest. Armed with two 7mm machine guns, two 20mm cannons, 65mm of armor glass, and powered by the 2,000-horsepower Nakajima engine, test reports were filled with excitement, and the prototypes appeared flawless. Consequently, production orders flooded in, calling for thousands of units. However, just 18 months later, Squadron Leader Kobayashi submitted a contrasting report, detailing the loss of aircraft 1446 during landing due to gear collapse, with no enemy engagement. Another report cited engine failure at 15,000 feet, and yet another reported brake failure during takeoff. By 1945, the same design that had performed flawlessly in testing struggled to reach even 250 mph in combat. Japan had indeed engineered a plane capable of outperforming the P-51 Mustang, but they ultimately failed to mass-produce it effectively when it was most crucial. On that bright July morning in 1943, the Nakajima Ha-45 Homar engine roared to life under Lieutenant Fubashi's control as he settled into the cockpit of the second Ki-84 prototype. Through the sturdy 65mm armor glass canopy, he spotted Chief Engineer Koyama standing beside the runway at Tachikawa Airfield, his stopwatch gleaming like a good luck charm. The engineer's face showed the intensity of a man who had dedicated 18 months, working 16-hour days, to this defining moment when Japan would prove its ability to construct a fighter equal to America's highly regarded P-51 Mustang. Fubashi's gloved hands carefully manipulated the throttle quadrant with the respect a samurai would give to a perfectly crafted sword. The Homar's 18 cylinders unleashed 2,000 horsepower at takeoff, a level of raw power unmatched by any previous Japanese fighter. As he pushed the throttle forward, the aircraft strained against its wheel brakes like a caged animal eager to break free. The sound was captivating, a deep, mechanical rumble that promised both intense speed and destructive force. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Let us know in the comments where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Even amidst this pinnacle of engineering achievement, subtle indicators of potential issues surfaced. The Ha-45 engine, while undeniably potent, exhibited higher operating temperatures compared to its predecessors in the Japanese radial engine family. Ground personnel observed prolonged elevated engine temperatures post-flight, hinting at limitations within the cooling apparatus that could pose challenges in the demanding conditions of tropical combat environments. Furthermore, the sophisticated direct injection system, while enhancing performance, necessitated more meticulous maintenance compared to the simpler carburetor systems commonly found in Japanese aircraft. Of greater concern was the landing gear mechanism itself. Although it performed flawlessly during testing, its design was notably heavier and more intricate than earlier iterations. The hydraulic actuators, precisely machined struts, and integrated braking systems presented manufacturing hurdles that would strain Japan's industrial capacity as production volume increased. Koyama's pursuit of engineering perfection had yielded a masterpiece. Yet such masterpieces demanded highly skilled artisans for their creation. As the summer of 1943 transitioned into autumn, the Ki-84 program gained momentum toward full-scale production. Across Japan, test pilots consistently reported that the Hayate surpassed existing Japanese fighters while approaching the capabilities of the P-51 Mustang. Intelligence reports from the Pacific suggested that American pilots, emboldened by months of aerial superiority, were ill-prepared for a Japanese fighter that could rival their speed and exceed their firepower. The prospect seemed undeniable. Japan had developed an aircraft capable of defeating the P-51 Mustang. Prototypes demonstrated it, test data validated it, and production orders reflected this confidence. However, promises forged in engineering labs would soon confront the harsh realities of wartime manufacturing. The true test of the Hayate would occur not in the controlled environment of Tachikawa Airfield, but amidst the chaos of mass production within an increasingly desperate empire. Stay with us to watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Squadron leader Kobayashi carefully adjusted his parachute straps as he made his way toward his Ki-84 on the dusty airfield near Hangzhou, China, amidst the stifling heat of August 1944. The 22nd Sentai had recently received their initial operational Hayates just 2 weeks prior, and today marked their inaugural combat mission against American Army Air Force fighters that had become dangerously complacent over Chinese airspace. The morning briefing crackled with anticipation. At long last, Japanese pilots would command aircraft capable of matching the capabilities of the enemy's revered Mustangs and Thunderbolts. The initial combat sorties exceeded all expectations. American pilots, accustomed to effortlessly outmaneuvering Japanese interceptors, encountered fighters that not only matched their speed, but also delivered devastating cannon fire from unforeseen angles. Lieutenant Sasaki's post-mission report encapsulated the Americans' shock. Enemy formation scattered immediately upon visual contact. 2 P-51s attempted high-speed dive escapes, unsuccessful, both destroyed by 20 mm cannon fire at 400 meter indicated airspeed. For a duration of 3 weeks, the 22nd Sentai's Ki-84s instilled fear among American formations over central China. The psychological impact was immediate and significant. American bomber crews, who had grown accustomed to Japanese fighters lagging behind during their escape maneuvers, now faced interceptors that could pursue them at maximum velocity while delivering accurate fire. The tactical advantage that had favored American aviation since 1943 appeared to shift virtually overnight. However, Kobayashi began to discern troubling patterns emerging from successful missions. Aircraft 1446 returned from a routine patrol with hydraulic fluid leaking from its landing gear bays. The pilot reported normal flight characteristics, but a post-flight inspection revealed stress fractures in the main gear struts, fractures that were absent during pre-flight inspections. Maintenance Chief Watanabe examined the damaged components with increasing concern, noting that the steel exhibited a brittle, almost crystalline structure. 3 days later, aircraft 1452 experienced a complete landing gear collapse upon touchdown. Pilot Officer Tanaka emerged unharmed, but the Hayate was deemed a total loss, its fuselage twisted beyond repair, engine mounts fractured, and propeller blades contorted into useless metal sculptures. The accident report cited mechanical failure as the cause, but Kobayashi's experienced eye detected a more ominous issue. The quality of materials deviated from that of the prototypes they had tested in Japan. Watanabe's thorough inspection of the collapsed gear revealed the extent of the problem. The heat treatment of the steel struts was inconsistent, resulting in areas of extreme hardness adjacent to sections that remained dangerously soft. Under the stresses of combat maneuvers and hard landings, these inconsistencies acted as stress concentrators, propagating fractures through critical load-bearing components. "This is not the same steel quality we saw in the early production aircraft," he reported to Kobayashi. "Something has changed in the manufacturing process." The engine problems proved even more concerning. The He-45 Homar, which had performed flawlessly in prototypes, now exhibited significant power variations from aircraft to aircraft. Lieutenant Yamada's fighter produced barely 1,800 horsepower at takeoff, 200 less than specifications demanded. Sergeant Pilot Ito's engine ran so hot that he was forced to abort 2 missions when cylinder head temperatures exceeded safe limits. Most alarming was the complete engine failure experienced by Pilot Officer Fuji at 8,000 feet over enemy territory. Only his skill and good fortune allowed him to glide back to friendly airspace and execute a dead stick landing. Maintenance records revealed the underlying crisis. Engines supposedly built to identical specifications varied by as much as 200 horsepower in actual output. Some Homar engines delivered their rated power smoothly across the entire operational envelope. Others suffered from rough running, overheating, or premature component failure. The precision manufacturing that had created the prototype's exceptional performance was disappearing from production aircraft with alarming speed. The rapid deterioration in the operational readiness of the 22nd Sentai was alarming. By September, their rates had plummeted from a respectable 80% to a concerning 65%. The very aircraft designed to assert dominance over Chinese skies were instead rendered useless, grounded due to a severe shortage of spare parts. These essential components were either delivered sporadically or failed to arrive altogether. Squadron leader Kobayashi was forced to implement stringent rationing measures, carefully selecting the few pilots who would fly the limited number of mechanically sound aircraft available each day. This situation had a devastating impact on the morale of the pilots. These highly trained men had dedicated themselves to mastering the Ki-84, believing it would restore Japan's aerial supremacy. They had meticulously studied performance data, diligently practiced tactics designed to exploit the Hayate's superior speed, and mentally prepared themselves for air combat in a fighter capable of matching American aircraft. Instead, they found themselves piloting machines prone to sudden and unpredictable failures. Pilot Officer Nakamura poignantly captured the growing sense of frustration in his diary. "Today, my engine abruptly lost power during an engagement with 2 P-40 Warhawks. Aircraft that I should have easily outmaneuvered nearly shot me down because my Homar engine could not maintain full power above 12,000 feet. The Americans are not superior pilots. Their aircraft simply perform as expected." Reports coming in from other Ki-84 squadrons verified that the 22nd Sentai's tribulations were not isolated incidents. The 52nd Sentai, stationed in the Philippines, reported similar issues with landing gear failures. The 73rd Sentai, based in Formosa, documented identical inconsistencies with their engines. Factory manager Yamamoto was inundated with increasingly urgent requests for technical assistance, spare parts, and explanations for the declining quality of the production aircraft. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Let us know in the comments where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Intelligence reports gleaned from captured American pilots revealed the enemy's growing awareness of Japan's manufacturing woes. One downed P-51 pilot confided to his interrogators, "We were alerted to watch for new Japanese fighters with improved performance, but many of those we encounter seem to be plagued by mechanical problems. Some can barely keep pace with our bombers, let alone effectively engage our escorts." The statistical evidence was irrefutable. While combat losses inflicted by enemy action remained within acceptable parameters, the Ki-84's robust armament and protective features allowed skilled pilots to engage American fighters on relatively even footing. Mechanical malfunctions were responsible for the destruction of nearly 30% of the aircraft without any enemy involvement. Landing gear collapses, engine failures, hydraulic malfunctions, and brake system failures were proving more effective at removing Hayatis from combat than the guns of American fighters. Kobayashi's October status report to higher headquarters painted a bleak picture of the 22nd Sentai's condition. Out of an original complement of 18 aircraft, only 9 remained operational. 3 had been lost to enemy action, and 6 had succumbed to mechanical failure. He urgently requested immediate technical assistance and priority delivery of replacement aircraft, built to the original, uncompromised specifications. The response from Tokyo was both revealing and terrifying. Replacement aircraft were being produced as quickly as possible, but quality control standards had been drastically reduced to meet urgent delivery deadlines. The perfect fighter that Japan had designed to surpass the P-51 Mustang was being destroyed not by American pilots, but by the desperate industrial shortcuts necessitated by a losing war. The first B-29 superfortresses materialized over Tokyo Bay on November 24, 1944. Their gleaming silver fuselages, suspended at 30,000 feet, resembled deadly angels. From his office window at the Nakajima factory in Ota, Chief Engineer Koyama watched the formation pass overhead, gripped by the terrible certainty that his world was about to change forever. The bombers flew with impunity, their altitude placing them beyond the reach of most Japanese interceptors. Their very presence signaled that America's immense industrial capacity had finally extended to Japan's home islands. Factory manager Yamamoto received the acceleration order 3 days later. Ki-84 production must surge from 40 aircraft per month to 120 by January 1945. The directive arrived without any additional resources, steel allocations, or supplementary skilled workers, simply a demand that the impossible be achieved through sheer determination and sacrifice. Yamamoto stared at the production schedule spread across his desk, performing mental calculations that confirmed what his experience already knew. Quality would inevitably be the first casualty of this new urgency. The initial B-29 raids targeted aircraft factories with surgical precision. On February 10, 1945, waves of superfortresses descended upon the Ota complex at midday, releasing hundreds of 500-pound general-purpose bombs across the Nakajima production facilities. The explosions obliterated assembly lines, destroyed precision tooling, and buried months of accumulated parts inventory under tons of twisted metal and concrete debris. Koyama watched 17 years of engineering excellence vanish in 90 minutes of methodical destruction. 2 weeks later, carrier-based aircraft from Task Force 58 attacked the rebuilt portions of the factory in a coordinated assault that demonstrated America's overwhelming air superiority. Hellcats and Corsairs swept in at low altitude there, 50-caliber machine guns tracing lines of devastation across anything resembling industrial activity. The raids were so frequent and effective that normal production became impossible. Nakajima was forced to implement a dispersal program, scattering Ki-84 manufacturing across dozens of smaller facilities hidden in schools, temples, and underground bunkers. The dispersal strategy caused production to plummet to less than 25% of required output, while simultaneously destroying quality control systems that had barely functioned under normal circumstances. Components manufactured in a converted schoolhouse in Gunma Prefecture arrived at final assembly, with dimensional tolerances that varied wildly from specifications. Engine parts produced in underground workshops lacked the precision machining that was essential for the HA-45 Homar to function properly. Most critically, the heat treatment facilities required for proper steel processing were too large and conspicuous to hide from American reconnaissance aircraft. Yamamoto's records meticulously chronicled the accelerating disintegration of the nation's industrial prowess. The availability of high-grade steel, essential for numerous applications, dwindled as Allied aerial bombardment systematically crippled transportation networks and obliterated specialized smelting facilities. The intricate alloys crucial for crafting durable landing gear components were substituted with any metallic remnants salvaged from devastated buildings and wrecked vehicles, a desperate measure reflecting the scarcity of resources. The ranks of quality control inspectors, depleted by combat drafts, were filled by elderly volunteers who often lacked the requisite technical expertise to discern substandard parts, further compromising the integrity of the manufacturing process. The escalating fuel crisis exacerbated every existing challenge to an unprecedented degree. The Ha-45 Homar engine, a marvel of engineering, had been meticulously designed to operate on high-octane aviation gasoline, which ensured smooth and consistent combustion across its complex 18-cylinder configuration. However, by the early months of 1945, Japanese refineries were relegated to producing only low-grade synthetic fuel. This inferior fuel caused the sophisticated engine to operate erratically, overheat, and experience premature failures of critical components. The simplified, carbureted versions of the engine, introduced in a hasty attempt to ease maintenance burdens, proved to be even more problematic than the original direct injection systems when forced to run on the substandard fuel. Lieutenant Fubashi now found himself tasked with training inexperienced replacement pilots on aircraft that bore little resemblance to the formidable fighters he had rigorously tested just 18 months prior. The once vaunted Ki-84 prototypes, which had achieved impressive speeds of 387 mph under controlled test conditions, were now emerging from factories with maximum speeds barely exceeding 250 mph. The power output of the engines varied so drastically from one unit to the next that pilots were unable to accurately predict their aircraft's performance from one flight to the next, introducing an element of unpredictability and danger. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The devastating human cost of this industrial collapse became painfully evident in the daily stream of accident reports that piled up on Fubashi's desk. Pilot Officer Sato tragically lost his life when the landing gear of his aircraft catastrophically failed during a routine training flight, the struts snapping without warning due to improper heat treatment during manufacturing. Lieutenant Yoshida miraculously survived a forced landing after experiencing a complete engine failure mid-flight, but the aircraft was irrevocably destroyed when its inadequate braking system proved unable to halt the powerless fighter before it careened into a drainage ditch. Perhaps the most heartbreaking case was that of Flight Sergeant Kimura, who perished in a crash caused by a catastrophic failure of a control surface, an incident that subsequent investigation revealed was due to the use of substandard bolts manufactured from scrap metal in a makeshift basement workshop. Production statistics grimly illustrated the terminal decline of the Japanese industrial system. The original specifications for the Ki-84 fighter called for the delivery of 3,000 Hayate aircraft by the war's end. However, by the spring of 1945, fewer than 2,800 had been completed, and the operational readiness rates for those delivered aircraft had plummeted to below 45%. American intelligence estimates mistakenly suggested that Japanese fighter production was, in fact, accelerating. But these analyses failed to account for the profound degradation in quality that rendered the newly manufactured aircraft effectively useless for combat operations. The relentless submarine blockade surrounding Japan's home islands effectively severed the supply lines for critical components that could not be manufactured domestically. Specialized instruments, precision bearings, and high-quality steel all required materials or manufacturing techniques that Japan no longer possessed. Consequently, Ki-84 fighters rolled off the assembly lines missing essential equipment or fitted with inferior substitutes, making them a grave danger to their own pilots. Squadron leader Kobayashi, temporarily reassigned to Kasumigara Air Base to train new pilots, watched with growing dismay as waves of replacement aviators struggled to master aircraft that bore little resemblance to the fighters they had been promised. Young men who had dedicated months to meticulously learning the performance characteristics of the Ki-84 found themselves flying machines that responded unpredictably, suffered mechanical failures without warning, and could barely outrun the American bombers they were tasked with intercepting. Underground factories represented Japan's final, desperate attempt to sustain aircraft production in the face of overwhelming adversity. Elaborate tunnel complexes, painstakingly carved into mountainsides, housed assembly lines designed to produce 200 Ki-84 fighters per month, while remaining concealed from American reconnaissance aircraft. However, these underground facilities lacked proper ventilation for paint booths, adequate lighting for precision work, and a functional transportation infrastructure for moving completed aircraft to operational airfields. Most critically, they could not replicate the rigorous quality control systems that had made the original prototypes such exceptional fighters. By April 1945, the gap between the design potential of the Ki-84 and the stark reality of its manufacturing had become an unbridgeable chasm. The same aircraft that had once promised to restore Japanese air superiority had now become more dangerous to its own pilots than to the enemy they were intended to engage. Factory manager Yamamoto's meticulous production reports documented an industrial tragedy of immense proportions. Japan possessed the advanced engineering knowledge to build world-class fighters, but it had irretrievably lost the manufacturing capability to produce them reliably. The convergence of Allied bombing, crippling material shortages, and relentless production quotas had transformed the Ki-84 from Japan's greatest aviation achievement into a potent symbol of industrial collapse. The invasion of Okinawa commenced at dawn on April 1, 1945. Within hours, the desperate reality of Japan's strategic position became undeniably clear. American forces had successfully established a foothold just 350 miles from Kyushu, a distance close enough that their fighters could effectively escort bombers to any target within the Japanese home islands. Squadron leader Kobayashi received orders that afternoon to prepare 11 Ki-84 fighters for a suicide mission against the American airfields being rapidly carved out of the Okinawan coral. A mission that would require his aircraft to function flawlessly over the longest overwater flight most of his pilots had ever attempted. The pre-flight preparations starkly revealed the full extent of the manufacturing crisis that had consumed Japanese aviation. Aircraft 1463 exhibited hydraulic fluid leaks from multiple system connections, a direct result of using gaskets manufactured from inferior rubber compounds that could not maintain pressure under the stresses of combat. The port landing gear on aircraft 1471 extended only partially during testing, its actuating mechanism binding due to the poor machining tolerances in the hydraulic cylinders. Most concerning was aircraft 1458, whose HA-45 engine emitted black smoke during run-up, indicating severe internal damage that maintenance crews lacked the necessary parts to repair. Chief Maintenance Officer Watanabe toiled ceaselessly through the night, endeavoring to cobble together a mere 11 operational fighters from the 18 theoretically assigned to his squadron. His repair procedures more closely resembled desperate battlefield triage than meticulous maintenance protocols. He resorted to cannibalizing functional components from irreparably damaged aircraft to create machines barely capable of surviving a solitary combat mission. As an example, the fuel pumps extracted from aircraft bearing the designation 1444 found a new home in aircraft 1467. Similarly, the landing gear struts salvaged from aircraft 1455 were employed to supplant the fractured assemblies in aircraft 1473. By the 14th of April, Watanabe had managed to assemble what he somberly described as 11 aircraft, constructed from the remnants of 18. The mission briefing held on April 15th laid bare the insurmountable tactical predicament confronting Japanese aviation. Intelligence reports revealed the establishment of 3 operational airfields on Okinawa by American forces, defended by a formidable array of over 200 fighter aircraft, including the latest P-51D Mustangs and P-47 Thunderbolts. Kobayashi's meager force of 11 Ki-84 fighters were to execute a perilous approach at low altitude to evade radar detection, ascend to attack altitude over their designated targets, release their bombs upon parked aircraft and fuel storage facilities, and subsequently attempt to fight their way back to Kyushu through what was certain to be overwhelming enemy fighter opposition. The mission commenced at 0530 hours, with Kobayashi leading the formation in aircraft 1469, one of the few remaining Hayates that still exhibited performance approaching its original design specifications. For the initial hour, the flight progressed without incident, the 11 fighters maintaining a tight formation as they skimmed the wave tops at a mere 50 feet above the water's surface. However, the persistent mechanical failures that had plagued Ki-84 operations throughout 1945 began to manifest even before the formation reached enemy territory. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Aircraft 1472, piloted by Pilot Officer Sasaki, began emitting a trail of white smoke at 0645 hours as its engine commenced consuming oil at an alarming rate. The HA-45's cylinder head temperatures steadily climbed into the red zone, despite Sasaki's desperate attempts to reduce power settings and lean the fuel mixture. A mere 20 minutes later, the engine seized completely, its internal components fusing together due to excessive heat and insufficient lubrication. Sasaki was left with no alternative but to attempt a water landing, becoming the first casualty of a mission that had yet to encounter any enemy resistance. The formation pressed onward toward Okinawa, with only 10 aircraft, but further mechanical woes emerged as the flight progressed. Lieutenant Tanaka reported intermittent losses of hydraulic pressure in aircraft 1468, causing his flight controls to become increasingly heavy and unresponsive. The fuel flow indicator in aircraft 1471 fluctuated erratically, suggesting either a failing fuel pump or contaminated fuel lines that threatened to starve the engine at any given moment. Most ominously, aircraft 1465 began experiencing electrical failures that progressively disabled radio communication, navigation instruments, and crucial engine monitoring systems. As the diminished formation approached the Okinawan coastline at 07:15 hours, American radar operators detected the low-flying aircraft and vectored interceptors to engage them. The tactical situation rapidly deteriorated as P-51 Mustangs dove from their superior altitude to engage the Japanese fighters before they could even reach their intended targets. Kobayashi ordered maximum power and initiated a climb to gain the altitude necessary for bombing runs. But several of his aircraft were unable to respond to the emergency power settings. Aircraft 1464, piloted by Flight Sergeant Watanabe, suffered a complete engine failure during the maximum power climb when its Heihei 45's connecting rod snapped and pierced through the crankcase. This catastrophic internal damage instantly transformed the engine from a source of power into a significant source of drag, forcing Watanabe to attempt a perilous dead-stick landing on the contested island below. Aircraft 1467 experienced an unexpected landing gear extension during the combat climb, a hydraulic malfunction that increased drag so dramatically that the fighter could no longer maintain formation airspeed. The actual attack against the American airfields devolved into a chaotic and desperate running battle, as mechanical failures crippled Japanese combat effectiveness to a greater extent than enemy action. Lieutenant Yoshida successfully released his bombs on a fuel storage area, but was forced to abort his strafing run when his 20mm cannons jammed due to faulty ammunition feed mechanisms. Pilot Officer Nakamura's aircraft lost all hydraulic pressure during its bombing run, rendering the controls so heavy that he could barely maintain level flight, let alone engage in any form of combat maneuvering. The withdrawal from Okinawa transformed into a desperate race for survival, as American fighters relentlessly pursued the surviving Japanese aircraft back toward Kyushu. Aircraft 1473 suffered a brake system failure during its escape attempt, causing the wheel assemblies to lock and creating massive drag that made the fighter an easy target for the pursuing Mustangs. The electrical failures in aircraft 1465 finally resulted in complete instrument failure, forcing the pilot to navigate by dead reckoning while under constant attack from multiple enemy fighters. Of the 11 Ki-84 fighters that had launched on the mission, a mere 3 limped back to base, and 2 of those suffered landing gear collapses during touchdown due to the inferior steel and inadequate heat treatment that had become commonplace in late war production. The mission's tactical results were negligible, inflicting minimal damage to the American airfields that was swiftly repaired within hours, while the strategic implications were devastating. Japan's most advanced fighter aircraft had proven incapable of executing even the most basic combat operations due to its pervasive mechanical unreliability. Kobayashi's after-action report succinctly captured the complete breakdown of Japanese aviation capability. Mission effectiveness reduced to 0 due to mechanical failures exceeding combat losses by a ratio of 2 to 1. Aircraft that reached the target area could not maintain formation or execute coordinated attacks due to individual system failures. Recommendation? Suspend all Ki-84 combat operations until manufacturing quality control can be restored to acceptable standards. The diary entry of an anonymous pilot, discovered in the wreckage of aircraft 1469 following a mission, starkly illustrated the human cost exacted by the crumbling industrial base. Today I piloted what was supposed to be Japan's premier fighter. At 15,000 feet, the engine sputtered. The landing gear warning light blinked incessantly throughout the entire flight. Upon landing, the left strut buckled immediately upon touchdown. This is not the aircraft we were promised during our training. This is not the weapon that will secure Japan's salvation. The atomic blast that obliterated Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, did more than just level a city. It shattered the last vestiges of hope for Japanese resistance. Deep within the subterranean aircraft factories hewn into the mountains surrounding Nagoya, laborers toiled on, piecing together Ki-84 fighters with parts so deficient that the completed aircraft could scarcely taxi, much less engage in aerial combat. Factory manager Yamamoto navigated through tunnels lined with Hayate fighters in various states of assembly, their engines destined never to ignite, their landing gear fated to collapse upon initial contact, their control surfaces fashioned from materials salvaged from bombed-out structures. The projected output of 200 aircraft each month had devolved into a bitter jest. The clandestine assembly lines eked out perhaps 30 fighters monthly, and half of those were immediately sidelined due to mechanical malfunctions detected during the initial engine trials. The precision tooling indispensable for crafting the He-45 Homar engines had been obliterated in bombing raids months prior, supplanted by makeshift equipment incapable of upholding the tolerances crucial for dependable operation. Workers, once adept at shaping components to within 1,000th of an inch, now wrestled to attain dimensional precision measured in fractions of inches. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We would be grateful for your like and subscription. Where are you watching from? And what do you think of the topic being discussed in this video? Chief Engineer Koyama was inundated with reports from testing facilities, each documenting the utter deterioration of the Ki-84's performance. The later production aircraft, ostensibly identical to the 1943 prototypes, now struggled to attain maximum speeds exceeding 250 mph, slower than the American P-40 Warhawk fighters, which had been considered outdated since 1942. The Homar engines churned out such erratic power that pilots were unable to predict whether their aircraft would ascend normally or struggle merely to maintain altitude, even in level flight. Lieutenant Fubashi found himself conducting acceptance flights on aircraft that bore only a superficial resemblance to the fighters he had evaluated 2 years earlier. The cockpit instruments were crude imitations of the originally specified precision gauges, often delivering readings so inaccurate that pilots relied on instinct rather than data. The hydraulic systems leaked ceaselessly, leaving puddles of fluid on hangar floors and creating treacherous conditions that rendered ground operations perilous. Most tragically, the armament systems, which had given the Ki-84 the potential to outmatch American fighters, now jammed with regularity due to ammunition manufactured from substandard materials in makeshift factories. The fuel situation spiraled into catastrophic proportions as Japan's synthetic refineries endured repeated bombing assaults. The high-octane aviation gasoline, which enabled the Homar engine to generate its rated 2,000 horsepower, was supplanted by crude substitutes that induced severe engine knocking, overheating, and premature component failure. Pilots reported that their engines experienced unpredictable power loss during flight, sometimes recovering after several minutes, but frequently forcing emergency landings that typically resulted in landing gear collapse due to the brittle steel utilized in late war struts. Squadron leader Kobayashi, now tasked with defending the Tokyo area with whatever aircraft could be rendered airworthy, confronted the insurmountable challenge of intercepting B-29 bombers with fighters that could barely reach the altitudes at which the superfortresses operated. His pilots, many of whom were teenagers with fewer than 50 hours of flight training, struggled to control aircraft whose flight characteristics varied from day to day, contingent on which components had been replaced with inferior substitutes during maintenance. The mechanical failure rate escalated to calamitous levels by July 1945. Over 50% of Ki-84 fighters were grounded at any given moment, awaiting parts that would never materialize or repairs that could not be executed with the available materials. Aircraft that did manage to take flight faced a 20% probability of experiencing critical system failures during the flight, failures that often proved fatal to pilots who lacked the experience to manage emergencies in an aircraft whose backup systems had also been compromised by substandard manufacturing quality. The arrival of American technical personnel in Japan following the surrender laid bare the full extent of the engineering tragedy that had befallen the Ki-84 program. Captain Chuck Morrison, a test pilot assigned to assess captured Japanese aircraft, approached the examination of a late-production Hayate with the methodical professionalism that characterized American technical intelligence endeavors. His initial assessment, predicated solely on visual inspection, identified numerous manufacturing flaws that would have been promptly rejected in American production facilities. Morrison's flight test of the captured Ki-84, utilizing high-octane American aviation fuel, yielded results that astounded both American and Japanese observers. With appropriate fuel and basic maintenance to rectify the most glaring mechanical issues, the fighter attained a maximum speed of 426 mph within 11 pi of the P-51D Mustang's top speed. The climb rate improved dramatically to over 3,000 feet per minute. Most remarkably, all systems functioned as originally designed when supplied with quality components and proper maintenance procedures. The post-war revelation was devastating in its implications. Japan had, in fact, conceived a fighter capable of matching or surpassing American aircraft performance. The Ki-84's fundamental engineering was sound, its aerodynamics were efficient, and its power plant was potentially superior to anything America produced when properly manufactured and maintained. The failure was not conceptual, but industrial. Japan's manufacturing capacity had crumbled under the strain of total war, rendering it impossible to construct the aircraft their engineers had designed. Engineers had conceived. Fubashi observed Morrison's evaluation flights with a complex blend of emotions, professional respect intertwined with deep sorrow. The American aviator piloted the Ki-84 precisely as Fubashi had maneuvered the prototypes back in 1943, exhibiting seamless power modulation, immediate control responsiveness, and an overall performance level that validated the initial high hopes surrounding the project. "Our fundamental design was sound," Fubashi mused while witnessing Morrison put the aircraft through its paces. "But we lacked the capacity to manufacture it effectively when it mattered most." The data amassed by American engineering teams laid bare the extent of the industrial breakdown. Out of the 3,514 K-84 aircraft manufactured during the conflict, less than 120 ever achieved an acceptable degree of operational readiness at any single point in time. Losses attributed to mechanical malfunctions surpassed those resulting from enemy engagement by a ratio nearing 2-to-1. The very aircraft intended to re-establish Japanese dominance in the skies instead became an emblem of industrial disintegration under the crushing demands of total war. Factory manager Yamamoto, during interviews conducted by American investigators, shed light on the series of compounding failures that had undermined the quality of Ki-84 production. The aerial bombardment of facilities housing precision tooling, the conscription of experienced personnel into combat roles, the adoption of substandard materials as substitutes, and the setting of unattainable production goals had coalesced to form a perfect storm of manufacturing-related issues. "We were fully aware that we were producing flawed aircraft," he confessed, "but the only alternative was to cease production entirely." The solitary Ki-84 that emerged from the war unscathed stands as a testament to engineering ingenuity undone by industrial shortcomings. Preserved and exhibited at the Tokugawa Kinenkan Peace Museum in Chiran, the restored fighter represents both the zenith of Japanese aeronautical design and the devastating outcome of attempting to mass-produce intricate machinery amidst the constraints of wartime exigencies. Museum attendees, often unaware of the fighter's intricate backstory, perceive only a streamlined aircraft that seems capable of rivaling any contemporary fighter, which, under optimal conditions, it undoubtedly was. The narrative of the Ki-84 has become the quintessential illustration of the chasm between conceptual brilliance in engineering and actual manufacturing prowess. Japanese engineers successfully designed a fighter capable of outperforming the P-51 Mustang. However, their industrial infrastructure, crippled by the pressures of total war, proved incapable of producing that fighter when the nation stood most in need of it. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic.